So, you ready for something a little different? I was contacted by another YouTube channel who has asked me to review their fan film. And this is an AI short film. Now, I have reviewed a few short films before, and AI is something that we've seen come in the last year. I've seen a few scenes here and there in certain kind of indie films that have been inserted, but never a full AI movie. So I'm going to approach this a little differently to a regular review. More kind of like how I've done other fan films. So we're going to talk about the film, but also AI in general. So the actual story of the movie, this kind of short film, it feels more like a kind of companion piece. It's almost like the extra features of a movie. It doesn't really have a story in itself. It really just is sort of taking place around the fringes of the original movie, and kind of primarily features this cop who is kind of finds Michael Myers when he's like a boy, and then later on when he sort of become, you know, when he's the masked killer and everything. And it's kind of narrated for the most part. So let's talk about AI first of all. It's coming, you know. I don't think we're there yet in regards to this technology. I've reviewed a few indie movies, as I've mentioned, who have used scenes of AI, and in those movies I think they stick out, and the technology is not quite there yet, where it kind of looks like an animated movie still, and the scenes are always a little bit sort of static, that sort of thing, how people are framed and everything, and their movements are still a little bit sort of static. We're clearly on our way, where I think we're at probably in the next 2 or 3 years you'll get photorealistic videos that are really going to be, you know, you're not going to be able to tell really, but we're not quite there yet. And this is true of this as well. I mean, there are scenes, if you took a few scenes out of this and you would just have a quick snippet, you would see, you know, you would be fooled thinking you're watching a real, you know, filmed person. But when you're watching it as a whole, there are other scenes that look more sort of, you know, AI, computer generated, whatever you want to call it, and there are shortcomings still. So I think filmmakers are in a rush to use this technology, and I kind of understand the benefits of being able to create more elaborate kind of VFX heavy sequences when you're in such a low budget film, or in this case a fan film. But sometimes restraint, I think, is better for an actual story, because with the technology just isn't there quite yet. And it's like the early days of CGI, you know, when you used to have Jurassic Park popularised and Terminator 2 popularised CGI, and then you had the kind of the sci-fi channel when they, like, you know, have that kind of rudimentary sort of CGI, and you look back at it now and it looks terrible, and even then it didn't look great. I'm talking about the, you know, the sort of B-movie stuff. And it's like this with AI, you know. I think, you know, even now it doesn't look quite right. It's impressive the way you can kind of recreate something from nothing really, and for virtually no money. You've just got to be a bit patient with putting the stuff in, but it's not there yet. Now, there is the ethical question with AI as well. There obviously the Hollywood writers' strike. One of the kind of the points of that strike was about AI. Now, I think the big studios may well be a bit more restrained in it, but even there are some bigger films that have been that have had elements of AI in it. But certainly on the indie side of stuff, you know, the kind of the non-union films, I feel they're a little bit more of the Wild West, and that's where I think you'll probably see you know, AI sort of turn up more and more regularly. And I've reviewed, as I say, 2 or 3 films so far this year which have had sequences of AI. And I personally feel filmmakers shouldn't be in a rush to kind of like get into this and use it sparingly with films, because I watched a fantasy film by Laurie Brewster. I've forgotten what it's called now, to be honest, but those sequences of AI really stood out when mixed in with the kind of the live action stuff. So restraint, I think, should be needed. So let's talk about this one more specifically, and this is an all AI feature. So it's about 30 minutes, so it's not long. And like I said, it doesn't really have much of a story exactly. It's more just like a companion thing where it's kind of having scenes that are sort of complement the original film, to be honest with you. Now, I'm not the biggest slasher fan. I've seen some of the Halloween movies, but not all of them. By the way, I will link this movie down below so you can kind of watch it for yourself. But there are elements here that I think are impressive. And I think sometimes it's the more mundane stuff, you know, it's the kind of like, you know, this street with, you know, a burger place in the background or stuff like that. There's a couple of scenes where there's like a woman in a car, and you'll just see, like, you know, if you were to just take that sequence or a few seconds of that sequence, and you would think it was a real person. But then there's some stuff that kind of, you know, gives it away. As far as the actual Halloween side of stuff goes, I mean, they've got a fairly good likeness of Donald Pleasance. As obviously as Loomis here. Doesn't have a huge amount of stuff to do, but, you know, and there are sequences where we actually do have dialogue. There's a sequence where, like, a reporter's on the TV and he's talking, but we're not quite there yet. Again, with some of the other ones, our kind of our cop character, he's like narrating a lot of the time. The voice does not sound like it's coming out of an American cop. It sounds like it's coming from like a British aristocrat. And a lot of it is like narration rather than talking, and he's like looking directly at the camera and stuff like that. It isn't quite there, you know. And then if you're a purist of Halloween, you know, Michael Myers, he's flipping a car. He's getting shot point blank with a gun, about, you know, 4 or 5 rounds point blank to, and doesn't flinch. So, you know, it's a little bit more later Jason Voorhees rather than early Michael Myers. So, you know, maybe a little bit of a curiosity, and I think maybe a kind of a stepping stone for what could be coming up. I mean, I'm quite excited to see, like, fans' imagination about properties that I like Star Wars, for example, that have just gone down the toilet, and things like that, or maybe properties that are somewhat forgotten, like The Last Starfighter, and wow, we could see some stuff. I mean, I don't know how you use AI, but, you know, like, the possibilities of stuff to be produced, it'll be cool to watch, as these kind of little things. I think it's quite exciting, but we ain't there yet. And this sort of rudimentary start to this AI kind of cinema, I think we'll look back and think, you know what, they were a little bit ropey, they were a little bit rough on the kind of on the beginning of this. What I would suggest is if these things happen, they need to be edited more. So you might want to have this movie, but edit it. Go back and edit it like it would be like a film. Some of the kind of the transitions look like the AI transitions. That needs to be edited to make it more dynamic. I think the dialogue needs to be a little better in regards to you know, people being able to talk and not narration, and also the odd choices on voices and things like that. But it's an interesting thing to kind of look at, I would say. Certainly to kind of have a look at the beginnings of probably what is going to be, you know, in a few years' time, you're probably going to get features all AI, you know, and they'll probably come from the independent circuit first. So, you know, it might be good for you guys to kind of get on and have a look at this, at least to sort of see where this technology starting point is from, just so you can get on the ground floor to sort of like see the evolution about what will happen. So certainly interesting. As the technology goes, we're not quite there. As the film goes, as a piece of Halloween entertainment, Michael Myers based entertainment, it had some interesting elements, but I think this also needs, it can't be solely reliant on AI, not at least not yet. And this needs to have more of a structure in regards to story. It needs to concentrate a little bit more on the characters. It needs to have a better sort of editing and things like that. Again, some of this stuff I think could be done manually. You could create this sort of these things and then go back and kind of edit them so they look a little bit more kind of coherent and tell a little bit more of a story, rather than relying completely on the kind of the AI to kind of do it all and map it out all for you, which I think maybe is where what people are doing at the moment. I mean, like I said, I don't really use this technology, so I don't really know how it works, but it just seems like you needed to have a little bit more restraint, and then kind of look at it and edit what you've got to make it flow a little better. And again, when the technology catches up and the kind of the dialogue and the voices and the rest of it kind of get a little better, you know, who knows what we'll see. So a curiosity to be sure. So I will leave the link in the description below to check it out and see what you think. Let me know your thoughts, and I look forward to seeing you next time.